Hello, everyone. I'm Polly. I'm Common Sense Media's senior TV editor, and I am here chatting with astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson about coronavirus, science, and his National Geographic Channel series, Cosmos Possible Worlds. Hi there, how are you?
Well, thanks for having me and thanks for your interest. Now, you caught up with me in space here. Just wanted you to know. I'm actually
I'd like to be there with you. It seems like the place to be right now.
away from the coronavirus.
No kidding. I wanted to talk a little bit first just about kids, science, STEM, and what learning is all about right now. And I wanted to know what makes now an especially good time to learn about science?
Yeah, I don't think of it that way. I mean, that's a perfectly sensible question. But the way the question is posed is how I think many would pose it. It's as though, well, I'm at home doing nothing or cooking or being annoying to others. So let's learn something. Let's learn science. And that presupposes that science is a thing that's separate from anything else you do in a day. That to even think about it in that context, and I'm not blaming people for this. This is how it's taught in school. You're in your history class, your English class, and then here's the science class. Go learn your chemistry. Then when you finish your chemistry class, then now you're not learning chemistry. You're learning something else. The compartmentalization of science is, though understandable at some level, may be one of the greatest forces operating against people embracing science as something fundamental to who we are, what we do, the future and fate of civilization itself. So when I think of everyone being at home, I see it as an opportunity to explore how and why science touches everything, and not to separate it out as here's your 1 hour science lesson. Now let's go and do something different. When science is in everything you do. And that's where the challenge is. Are there enough people who know enough about this to share science in that way? And there's tons of YouTubers who are science enthusiasts. There's one, Diane Cowan, I think her handle is Physics Girl, I think is what she's called. And in the coronavirus, she says, okay, the next 5 minutes, we're going to do 20 physics experiments in your home. Let's go. And then the camera follows her around. And so it's fun. So yeah, I think it's an opportunity not only to see all the science that's in our lives, but to maybe up your literacy a few notches, because you need that to make decisions that affect policy, that affect laws, that affect decisions that people in power will need to make for the sake of our health, our wealth, and our security.
Yeah, I mean, that all makes sense. And I feel like science has never been more important and more valuable than it is at this moment in time. I wanted to ask you also about curiosity. What does staying curious mean to you in this moment in your life, anytime?
It means everything. I don't do that. Everything. We know kids are born curious. We know this because as parents, are you a parent? Are you?
I'm not.
No. Okay. So you haven't had to spend a big fraction of your life preventing your kids from dying due to their curiosity. Okay. So this is a big part of the energy invested by adults in raising young children, especially young children between 0 and 3. That's where all those choking hazards, that's that age threshold where something is less of a choking hazard than before. So here's the thing. I don't know what the fraction is. Could it be half? It's not more than half, maybe a third of everything a very young child will do has the risk of harming the child if they're left to, if you have a free range child. So the parent chases behind them or safetifies the house. And you say, don't do that, or they pull it away. They don't. And so this curiosity that the child is expressing ends up getting contained in a way. And yes, you want to do that so the child doesn't play with the knives. But I've seen it spill out of the realm of don't do this because it'll harm you to don't do this because it might annoy me. Don't do this because it might make too much noise. Don't do this because it might get the clothing dirty. Don't do this because I'll have to clean up after you. And I'm saying nobody has kids on the expectation that they're going to preserve order in the house. Kids are centers of entropy, and we should not squash that. We should celebrate it. And I remember, this is perhaps too long a story to justify the message at the end, but I'll try to shorten it. I was in Central Park, New York, in Manhattan, coming back from Shakespeare in the Park, which is one of the beautiful things that is offered in New York. And it had rained earlier in the day, and so there were puddles around. I saw a woman walking with her, I presume her daughter, a young daughter. The daughter had on the hat and the coat and the galoshes, and they're walking down a walkway towards a bottom area. And what's at the bottom area? There's a big mud puddle. Okay. And I'm watching and I say, please let this child jump in the mud puddle. You know, she wants to jump in the mud puddle. She can't resist it. And the child is like pulling the mother towards the mud puddle. And I'm saying, maybe. And then the mother just yanks her away. And I'm thinking, no, you just first ruined something that could have been really fun. Second, if you jump into a muddy puddle with 2 feet, there's a splash radius. You can then show her a crater on the moon and show the splash zone of the crater. And then you lost an opportunity to give a lesson in cratering. You lost that opportunity. And so, because you don't want to clean up the galoshes when she's done. See, that's the category of change I think we'd want to introduce to, if you want life to be its own science lesson.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I felt like going up to her and say, look what but you can't just walk up to strangers all the time and tell them how to raise their kids. People don't.
Why not? What's your advice for kids who love science? And alternately, what's your advice for kids who are a little scared or nervous about it, or feel like it's like, that's one of the hard things. I want to do an easy thing.
Yeah, they only start thinking it's hard after they've been to school and they had a teacher that was awful. So I don't blame their own arc, their own personal arc through life. But we've all had these experiences with teachers. We all want to love the teachers. I don't have a problem with that as a general sentiment, but that does not mean that all teachers are created equal. Mm-hmm. And I've done this experiment many times in public talks where I have thousands of people in front of me, and I just say, in your life, how many teachers can you count that had like a singular influence on you, where you became a different person for having had that teacher relative to others? And I can know in advance, it's not going to be more than just a handful. Yeah. And I say, how many is it? 1, and a couple of hands go, 2, 3, 4. It tops out at about 4. Then it starts going down again. For nobody is it 6. And how many teachers have we had? We've had scores of teachers in our lives. And if you go through college and graduate school, it's hundreds of teachers. Where teachers, you're changing class every hour, and you can only list 5. So here's my plan. Don't tell anybody. The first cloning machine, we get those we grab those teachers because we know who those teachers are and stick them in the cloning machine. That's how we do that.
That is a highly realistic and exciting answer. Which leads me to my next question.
But did I fully answer your question? I'm sorry, I went on that.
Yes. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yes. How do we as parents and teachers and friends and adults keep kids feeling excited about the future and technology, and especially now when things are a little bit scary?
So I have an unorthodox answer for you.
Great.
And you're asking all the right questions. How do we stoke the kids and keep them interested in all this. Professionally, however, professionally, however, I actually spend relatively little time giving attention to kids,
Mhm.
um, because I have judged that the kids need way less help than grown-ups do. I don't mean to sound cynical here.
No, it's a valid point.
The grown-ups vote, the grown-ups wield resources, money, opportunity. The grown-ups are in charge. The grown-ups are heads of industry, are heads of states. And if you have a grown-up class that is either in denial of science, rejecting science, does not know or understand the value of curiosity, then you create a world that doesn't nurture it. And then the person who remains curious into adulthood becomes the exception, who resisted these forces rather than the rule. So I submit to you that if you can foster a scientifically literate electorate, then overnight you have an awareness and an understanding of the value of education and what role education will play in your ability to think, and how you're going to make decisions, and how you're going to evaluate evidence, and how you're going to make decisions that will serve the interest of your demographic, right? I mean, this is, but you want the person to be informed. In all of my social media, I don't tell people who to vote for, who to hate, who to not hate. I don't do any of that. What I do is I offer insights to help you decide to or for insights to empower you to think more deeply about whatever it is that you confront. And a more deeply thinking culture, in the end, can only be better served by that fact. So I'm really not worried about the kids. And I would say in the transition between curious kid and sort of brain dead adult, I would say you, as an adult, you just really have to get out of the kids' way. And I think they will retain, if not all the curiosity, certainly most of it. Stop squashing the curiosity. Let it unfold if you see it. You don't say, oh, that will never work. I wouldn't, that's, excuse me. All right. You're twice the person's age. What you learned tells you it'll never work, but they're coming from a whole other place. And here's something I hardly tell anybody, because it's a kind of a half-baked thought. You know, will you allow a half-baked thought on your, okay. So if you look at where the United States is on all measures of science proficiency in exams, what fraction of the students score in math and in science and all, we tend to be very low, like in the bottom 10% consistently. Okay. So, but then you look around and you say, even so, and even though a lot of the world is catching up, the United States still innovates. We still do some innovative things, not uniquely as we once did on the world landscape, but hasn't, you would think that being that low on the educational scale would totally take out the innovation. And here's what I think is going on that I don't see much written about. If you go to a mall, okay, and you see a kid out of its stroller, and the parent saying, Junior, get back in your stroller. And the kid says, no, I don't want to go. I want a toy. I want a thing. It's an American kid who's doing that. That is not a kid from another country. It's not a family from another country. That is an American kid. And you say to yourself, wow, that the fact that that's even allowed, you don't like it as a parent, but it happens. You've seen it happen, okay? And one day it may even happen to you with either your kids or somebody else's kids. So America is like the great place of irreverence for adult authority. And maybe wherever you are on this testing scale, that your irreverence for others who have come before you is necessary to have an idea that they did not have. It does not contain you. And by the way, and you were taught by somebody who learned what they learned from yet a previous generation. Think about that. So there's actually a double generation gap between what comes out of your teacher's mouth and what you're taught. So, and what you end up learning. So when I see misbehaving children, I'm saying, yeah, I'm in America.
They're just innovating. They're just
Yeah,
innovating.
that's what we should tell ourselves. These are the
Exactly.
seeds. This is tomorrow's Steve Jobs. This is tomorrow's.
My little innovator.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. One thing that we are working with a lot at Common Sense Media is the fact that everyone's at home. They're consuming a lot more media, you know, whether it be TV, whether it be, you know, classes on Zoom. How do you think, and as a person with a TV show, Cosmos, how do you think kids can best learn from TV or any media?
Yeah. I don't.
Or enjoy it. Well, you know, what do you think
Yeah.
the goal
Yeah. So
is?
let me give a story.
All right.
I don't take all your time giving my stories, but um, Isaac Newton, I'm a big fan of his work. In 16, as you know, he discovered gravity. I mean, everything you've heard about him is true. Okay, discovered gravity, optics, calculus, all of this. Okay, he in 1665, the plague, the last of the sort of great plague waves through Europe, hit London and surrounds. And at the time, he was in Cambridge, whereas at the University of Cambridge. And what he decided to do, I think they maybe even closed Cambridge during this plague. And he went to his childhood home in Lincolnshire, which is out in the middle of nowhere in England. And there he spent 2 years. That's when he made all of these discoveries. And he reflects back on that time that his period of isolation enabled him to think more deeply, with greater intensity, and for longer periods of time than ever before. So when I look at the coronavirus in which we're all embedded, this distance coronavirus with access to unlimited media, my first thought is, now I can consume more media than I already do. I'm kind of not thinking that. I'm kind of thinking maybe you should just take a walk. People say stay home. What they mean is don't go out and hang out with other people. That shouldn't stop you from taking a walk in the park, or whatever is your park, along the lake, the beach, down the streets. That shouldn't stop that. Okay, just keep your distance from people. But spend time to introspect. It could be valuable to your own self health, intellectual, emotional health, but also if you have some ideas that you've been cultivating, these are the times to introspect on those ideas. Or read books. There's a huge and burgeoning, now I say that just, for disclosure, I also write books. So I just want to be honest about that sentence, okay? Read books. Books are this limitless source of knowledge. And you can consume them in whatever way you want. Generally, smart people write books, generally. And so the fact that something exists as a book is already a kind of a filter for what you be exposed to, whereas the internet has no filters at all. And so, as I've said in the master class that I just posted, you can type in anything that you believe, no matter how crazy, and the search engine will find all the other people who believe exactly the same thing, giving you false affirmation of your crazy idea. So books have benefited from publishers and editors and this sort of thing. So there's a filter there. My point is, why not use it as an occasion to write your memoir, write make videos of things you know or love, do oral history. If you have older people at home, interview them and get them to tell you about what it was to live through, depending how old they are, through the Second World War, through um, through the golden age of space exploration when we went to the moon. What did that feel like? And then you're contributing to a body of knowledge and a body of insight that we have the power to collect in our current lockdown situation. So I don't want to stop you from binging on your favorite shows. I've done a little bit of that. Okay, I don't want to say I'm not guilty, the guilty pleasures, but um, just to say, um, don't think of staying at home as now I can consume 10 times more media than I previously did.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about balance, and that's tricky in the best of times. But I feel like this has sort of taken us into just a super narrow vision of how we can do our best. What is the best way to deal with this? Whether it be, digging in the dirt to just, remember that there are things outside.
Yes. I love that. Just digging in the dirt.
I just go out to my backyard.
Overturning a rock, remind yourself of how fun that was when you were 5.
It's great. It's still great. Yeah. I mean, just really enjoying the small pleasures, the cup of coffee in the morning, or how good,
Right.
A Diet Coke tastes. Like, just these little things are keeping me, hanging on and trying to enjoy my time here at home.
Yes. Excellent.
All right. This is my final bonus question. I'm going to make you out your guilty pleasure. Okay, what's a book that you love? It can be for grown-ups or kids. What are you watching on TV, and how are you staying entertained during this time?
So if we could focus on entertainment, there are books I'm reading, but I don't recommend them for others necessarily. So I'll give there's books I might recommend for you. Okay.
Good.
For a reader. All right. So let me be completely self-serving there and say my most recent book is called Letters from an Astrophysicist, and it's a hand-picked, curated set, 100 letters that I've received. I've received thousands, but this is the hand-picked 100 over the past 30 years, actually. People writing to me, asking all kinds of questions, and I'm responding on platforms that generally I don't offer myself on in my public persona. People asked about UFOs and astrology and God and their God versus somebody else's God. And somebody saw an apparition and what did that mean? And someone saw her father in a funeral home and had a conversation with her dead father. What could that? So I've actually been engaging people in all of these, so this underbelly of academic inquiry, this underbelly where people are just having life experiences and they're seeking an expert's take on it. So this is a collection of those, and it's called Letters from an Astrophysicist, and it was published a year and a half ago. Yeah. And just before that, there's a much fatter book. If you're into fat books, some people are, it's called Accessory to War, the Unspoken Alliance Between Astrophysics and the Military. So it's a war book, it's a history book, and I co-authored it with a longtime editor of mine, Avis Lang. And it explores the fact that my profession, where we look up all the time, you can't get more humble than that, staring up at the universe above your head. Meanwhile, there's a whole history of our complicit participation in militaristic thinking. And it's a two-way street. We do something in the sky. We want to track a fast-moving object that's moving in the sky. Well, so does the military, okay? How did you do that? And then we share this information with them. And the military figures out how to, target something with multispectral imaging. And we say, how did you do that? So there's a two-way street. We don't make bombs, but the methods and tools are highly overlapping. Again, I don't want to use up all the time doing it, but there's another book that came out just before that called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. That went bestseller. And it's not very big. And if you just want a quick, you're not in a hurry, if you're in a hurry, and you just want to get in there, get the job done, and get out. And it was so successful. There's a kids version of that book that exists. It's for tweens. I don't know if you know tweens. That's age like 8 to 12, just before you're not quite a teenager yet. And it's called Astrophysics for Young People in a Hurry. Personally, I don't think young people should ever be in a hurry, but the book is there, and it has a lot of my biographical profile when I was that age, because that's when I first took interest um, in the universe. So right now I happen to be reading a conference proceedings from 1933 on scientists, social scientists, who were giving the greatest discoveries of the eugenics movement. This is the movement where they're trying to use breeding to perfect the human race, not only to breed desirable characteristics, but outbreed things they don't want. And so I do a lot of reading of how people used to think about the world, and how bias and how culture in a time can influence decisions you'll end up making that affect other people if you're in a position of power or influence. And so there's an article in there, a scientific paper about someone say, well, if we can't sterilize all these undesirables, because the undesirables need to make others of themselves so that they can work these jobs that we don't want to actually work. This is the kind of thinking that was going on in this time. So this gives me context. It gives me perspective, not only on the past, but also on where we are today and what biases infuse our culture that we're either aware of or not, so that we can sort of fend against it, I think, and possibly make the utopian world that I think at some level we all seek.
That brings me, I don't want to take up all of your time. So my last question is, what are your words of advice about hope? How can families and kids foster a sense of hope during this time and during all times?
Yeah, so I have a love-hate relationship with the word hope. So here's the hate part. The hate part is really, you've heard the phrase, I just need hope and prayer. You know, hope and prayer go together in many phrasings. And what do they have in common? Typically, hope and prayer are what you do, what you engage when you just admitted to yourself you are not in control of the outcome. You said, I have no control of the outcome. So let me pray to have an outcome that is what I want. You know, graduation is set for 2 months from now. You know, I hope it's a nice, clear day. We have to hope that, because we don't have models that can predict weather for 2 months. All right. You admitted you do not control that outcome. As a scientist and as an educator and as a man of action, as I think of myself, I don't want to ever have to be in this situation where all I have is hope. I want to be able to take action, even if it's small. So, let's look for people who are losing their jobs through the coronavirus. There are restaurants I frequented. New York City is a very big restaurant city. And so we are looking to donate monies that can sustain income for those where their entire job was preparing and serving your food when you went into their establishment. And so, no, I can't reopen the restaurant. The governor said close the restaurants, but I can put in a little bit here and a little bit there so that I can give hope to someone else, right? And so if you have the power to do so, even however small, then do so. And then you're not walking through life just saying, I hope. Now, that's my hate side. The love side of hope is hope. You know that phrase, hope springs eternal? When I was a kid, I didn't know what that meant, because springs are coily things, and spring is a season of the year. I just couldn't interpret the abstractness of it. Hope springs eternal. I think one of the things that allows us the courage, empowers us with courage to persist against immeasurable odds. And even you don't have a solution, but maybe one will arise if you just keep pushing. Maybe someone else will come up with a solution. And I think of that song from Man of La Mancha. The song got so popular, people forgot that's the musical it came from. It's to dream the impossible dream. If you just one day read the lyrics of that song, okay? And it's referring to Don Quixote with his joust tilting at windmills is, of course, where that expression came from. He's trying to fight the windmill. No, you're going to lose. All right. This thing is bigger than you. It's controlled by nature. All right. You're going to lose, but he still does it. And the lyrics of that song, how do you move the immovable object? How do you push against the defeat the unbeatable foe? And it says, I want to march into hell for a heavenly cause. Right? There's great lyrics in that is all about hope in the face of insurmountable odds. And so I got to give a little room for hope to live within myself in spite of my schizophrenic relationship to the word. I got to give it a little hope because really at the end of the day, I think civilization has pivoted on whether we have hope or not.
It's tricky, but I love hope and action working together. I think that's good synergy. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
This has been fantastic. It's just been a pleasure to talk to you, and good luck in your coronavirus.
And by the way, let me just put an end to the rumor. I can scream and I go, ah! In space, they can hear you scream. Okay. It's just how you configure the space, that's all.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Okay, excellent.
All
Thanks.
right.
Again, thanks for that interest.
Thank you. Bye-bye.